The floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. So, hi, I'm very happy to host this panel today. My name is Valentin Spiess. I'm the founder of iart, a studio for media architectures based in Basel, Switzerland. One of our main focuses is to explore the possibilities of digital experiences in museums. To reflect on current developments in digital media and museum, we organized this panel today, and we are very happy to have you all with us. Um, so if you have any questions during over the course of this panel, please use the Q&A button on the button at the bottom of the screen. So first of all, I am pleased to briefly introduce our three panelists who will be discussing this topic with me today. I would like to welcome Kulapat, Yantrasast, I hope I said it right, from LA, early morning LA, and also from LA is Brian Butterfield, both from Y, and a more deeper introduction will follow later. And then we have Grisha Coleman from actually currently being in Massachusetts. Is it correct? And then we have Moritz from joining us from Berlin. So more details about our panelists at a later point. So let's start with our topic. The panel is titled Digital Twin as a New Canvas for Cultural Institutions. In order to enter this discussion, I think we need to answer some questions first. What do we mean with digital twin? A lot of people are talking about this topic, but what does it mean in our context? And how does it relate to mixed and virtual reality? So I would like to show you one slide. So it's only one slide we're going to show you. And this is actually the reality-virtuality continuum, originally introduced by Paul Milgram in 1994. On the left, you see reality, and on the right, you see virtual reality. And in between, we have different zones or layers, we call it, of augmentation. So starting from the reality towards the augmented reality, going over to the augmented virtuality into the virtual reality. So based on this concept by Paul Milgram, we introduced a second aspect to it, which is actually location. Next slide, please. Yeah. So in the middle, you see there is a line. On the left side, now we have at the museum or on site, which is actually the place something happens, and at home, which is then the remote place. So we split these layers into two areas. One is when people are on site, and the rest is when people are remote. But to interconnect these two areas, we introduce the digital twin. The digital twin is actually the interface or the bridge to connect these two realities or these two worlds together. So based on the digital twin, which the digital twin is connected on one hand with the reality through sensors, for example, being installed in a museum, but also with all the interactions which are based on someone being in the virtual realities, being, for example, remote in the internet. All these data are gathered by the digital twin, and there can be interconnection between these two layers. These interactions can be based on one hand on game mechanics. They could be also based on storylines or even on AI-based scenarios. So the digital twin, as we understand it, is actually an interconnection of, or is the missing piece between the remote and the on-site world. and brings these worlds together and makes it possible to interconnect these two worlds. In our development at iart, we work with a digital twin based on a multiplayer game approach. So we use a game engine, which is in the cloud, to interconnect these two worlds and link them together. Okay, this as a short introduction, and now I would like to start to introduce our panelists. I like to welcome Kulapat. Kulapat is an architect and creative director and founder of Y Architecture. Today, being accompanied by Brian Butterfield, who is a specialist in the museum field. I met him the first time at the Met in New York, and now he is part of the Y community. And I'm very happy to have him as well in our discussion. Among many other projects, Kulapat has also created several museum works and has, for example, designed the gallery interiors for the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles, which will open soon, and is currently renovating the Michael C. Rockefeller Wing at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. What fascinates me most about Kulapat's work is his interdisciplinarity to architecture and design. I see a lot of similarities in the way they are working and our way of working. We have actually been in exchange for some time now, and I'm very pleased to have him being part of this panel. So Kulapat, you are intensively involved with museum architecture and the challenges of our time. So please give us a glimpse into your world.
Well, thank you. So I will just share my screen so we can all see that. Thank you. Everyone see the screen okay?
Yes.
So thank you, Valentin. I think, first of all, I'm also joined by my physical digital twin, Brian Butterfield, who is our director of our museum's workshop. We have a workshop dedicated to museum design and thinking. And like what you say, you know, we don't see ourselves as a hammer, we see ourselves as a toolbox. That the whole problem is if you're a hammer, everything you see, everything you look like a nail to you. So that's part of, you know, I think architectural thinking that I think sometimes did not allow us to see the more holistic solution to the architecture problem. And we are known as the architect thought partners to museums, old and new. For example, you know, this is at the Art Museum of Chicago, this is Harvard Art Museums, and then leading on to many other exhibitions. And we really like to really balance the scholarship of the curatorial with the engagement and discovery aspect of the visitors. That's what has always been what we want to do, so that it's wide and it's deep at the same time. Now, going back to what you just said, you know, I think we've been working with museums, in my case, almost 3 decades now. So it's always the same question, you know, what is a museum? What does it supposed to do? And how do we bring technology in a symbiosis experience into museum experience and vice versa? And based on your twin digital that you're talking about, you know, I mean, there's a word called phygital, which is now happening in our world. And one thing which is very important that I want to start with is 2 questions. What is not here and who is not here? What is not here, for example, this is our work at the American Museum of Natural History, also in New York City. We are renovating one of the oldest galleries, actually the oldest of that museum from 1896, which is the Northwest Coast Hall. And of course, these are from the First Nations and Native Americans along the Northwest Coast. And of course, the objects are in the room, but who are not in the room? The people who make the work, the culture supporting the work, the context, including people that could have also visited this hall who are not visiting New York City, right? So how do we make it work How do we bring the information and knowledge that are not visibly seen within the hall into it? So by the interpretation materials as well as other contexts about it, because it is, again, not all museums are made the same. This is a more of a naturalist museum, so there's more context, more engaging. Living culture need to be represented alongside artifacts that are collected in museums. So these are one aspect that you're seeing more and more about, using the digital interface and interpretation to allow what is not here, which is the people, the culture, the stories, and many other aspects of that livings that are represented by the artifacts. For example, and then of course, what's not there also is the hand-on aspect of learning, making, understanding the system behind the artwork. So that's the part. And so because of that, we work closely with the curators, understand the object, understand the physical space within the hall, but also understanding how do we bring the visitors into that story. We again, I think I always feel that we are the matchmaker between art people and art lovers and people lovers. We want the art to be seen in their own light, but they want people to feel comfortable and not intimidated by it. The other project I will bring out quickly before, this is again just an introduction so we can engage in a deep conversation later. This is the Rockefeller Wing at the Met that you mentioned, which is the art of Americas, Oceanias, and Africa. Again, we also using the focus on the scholarship and the collection, what the scholar can tell, but we also talked about the idea that how do we bring context of these cultures into New York? How, again, many of these cultures are living. So how that living culture through artifacts that might be collected 50 or 200 years ago, all of these is part of what we do. Now, last example, which is the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles, which is opening this Thursday. Again, this is not an art museum. So you see the Natural History Museum, you see the art museum, and now you see a film museum. I just want to kind of show a range of museum as this diverse, very different kind of animal that feed different aspects. And so in this case, it is a film museum. It represented its story through objects and frame clips and footage and articles and many other things. So you see something like this, you recall from Black Panther, from Star Wars, and many things. But it doesn't end there. It talks about its own media, which is screen, images, film, and even television. So how do we integrate these into the display? This is one of the gallery that welcome people with all of the scenarios and footages that they're familiar with throughout their life of film culture. Again, we use a lot of technology in how we plan our exhibitions, both in terms of 3D, to make sure that the physical experience is fully stimulated. People feel happy, they feel engaged, but they're also inserted with digital portals that lead them on to other materials that might not be in that room. For example, in this case, also from the Academy Museum. This is from one of our special project room, curated by Pedro Almodovar, the Spanish film director. And he then picked clips from his own movie and sound and related to the story, which is very inclusive. This is the colorful costume design from the movie as well. So I would end now leading up to our two wonderful panels. That we're seeing from our museum design experience. They change from museum as temple to museum as playground. And you will see how our two panelists really use museum as playground to really bring in what's not there and who's not there, to create layers of interpretation, layer of how to enjoy the museum. Again, when we talk about museum as playground, it's not just fun, but it's full engagement. When you go to playground, you choose what you want to play with, who you want to play with. there's a sense of very active experience in the playground. It's a very non-linear. You know, typical museums have a very linear storytelling. You go from history and you go according to the story that the curator laid out for you to do. New museum, with the help of technology and digital twin, like what you said, has now allowed visitors to have a non-linear experience. They choose what they want to do. They can choose in and out between the object in front of them to the stories, to the videos, and all around. And the last thing is this playground has also become worldwide because you could also be at home and through the digital twin, you can actually enjoy exhibitions and experience from museum in Paris, in St. Petersburg, or in Los Angeles. I think that allow us to be able to experience and create a community that exists in place as well as in other place. Thank you. So I will close here, and Brian will join me also in the next section for our discussion.
Thanks a lot, Kulapat. I'm really looking forward to visit the new museum in Los Angeles. And we directly jump to Grisha. Grisha is a Radcliffe Harvard Fellow and Professor of Art, Media, and Engineering at the Arizona State University. As an artist and scholar, Grisha works in the area of movement, digital media, and performance. She engages creative form in choreography, music composition, and human-centered computer interaction. Thanks to Grisha for being here. You are approaching this topic from a more body-based vantage point. Please tell us more about your work, please.
Thank you so much, Valentin. Thank you, Kulapat, for that beautiful presentation. Let me share. Okay. You'll see the PowerPoint, but I hope you don't mind. You'll see can you see now? View presentation. Yes?
Very good.
Okay, thank you very much. Sure. So thank you so much for having me in this panel. I think this is extremely interesting topic. As opposed to what Kulapat does in terms of building through the context and the form of museum, in a way, I'm going to focus on a singular project that took maybe 10 years to develop. It's called Ecosystem. And but I think you'll find it interesting that this slide, the real Valentin actually was created this continuum without knowing about your theme of the continuum. So I'll just read a bit and you can look. Within this work, notions of ecology and nature are explored without directly drawing on the material objects of the desert itself. In this case, we had 5 different ecologies: the abyss, the desert, the forest, the prairie, and the volcano. And we were doing simulacra of these habitats of nature. The connection with the land is digitally mediated rather than materially mediated, as is typical within ecological art of the 70s, what have you. Technology is used in place of materials of nature to explore these 5 ecologies metaphorically. Importantly, this work is not centered uniquely in the past or present of the ecologies, but also includes prospective, speculative futures, which, sorry, I have to start my timer, which present opportunities for abstract, expressive relationships with, and I'll just put it in quotations, the natural world, because even that idea is contested for sure. Additionally, it underscores the embodied and kinesthetic rather than the observational. So instead of looking at yourself in relation to an object, you are looking at yourself in relation, you are embodying the experience. And so we emphasize the experiential, the vehicle as a vehicle for connecting with and experiencing place. Within this work, the simulacrum is used to contain the construct of of an experience of ecology, but also as a means to transcend the specificities of geographic location to activate metaphors of place and space. Ecosystem looks to denature and reinvigorate human relationships to our environment. The work plays in spaces of myth and darkness. It plays with virtual layers of information to access, assess, and challenge the proliferation of knowledge about the environment as we try to use it and save it simultaneously. Ecosystem is a fusion of art installation, choreographed multimedia performance, and public engagement that looks to mediate a connection between art and science. That was what I was doing. This is like 2005, 6, 7 then. The project is a series of 5 large-scale environments created for both performance and installation. Each ecosystem habitat is called an action station and corresponds to a natural biome. Listening as the land talks back. So I'm emphasizing this, Valentin and Moritz, because of this idea of audio VR as opposed to visual VR, which is what is so typical in development nowadays. So the emphasis on listening as the land talks back is the setup. We embark on a journey of metaphors. So the other reason that I chose to present this work is because it started as an interdisciplinary collaboration amongst myself, a population biologist, an electroacoustic sound designer, a writer, which was Onome, and an information architect, and me as the choreographer. I created these series of collages, the ones that you're looking at now. And instead of sort of giving them a narrative of what I wanted the work to become, it was to present the work as image, as poetic, alternative, in this, you talk about the digital twin, but we talk about the uncanny valley, the kind of space, especially now in deep learning and with AI, the expression of that which is kind of real and kind of not real, kind of what you're referring to, and also not. So we looked a lot at ecological patterns of ordination, natural selection processes, and then sort of made up our own data with the processes that were scientific processes that are usually applied to quote unquote, well, to real environments, and then we applied it to these created environments. So here you see a shot from an image from our first outdoor installation. Well, that was called The Abyss. And you had the dancers hooked up to straps that would track their movement, their speed, and that would feed back into the system of images that came out and the score that was linked to it. This is a still image from when the project went to El Yunque, which is the rainforest in Puerto Rico, the only tropical rainforest in the US. And this is some images of the piece that once its final, the desert in Yerba Buena in San Francisco. So wow, I have 18 seconds left, so I'm not gonna say that much more. I'm just gonna tell you that we hacked into a whole bunch of treadmills in this way of like old tech, leveraging old tech and new, and you'll see this went to the museums in Beijing. We would dance on them. We created a model with motifs that would play. And if I may, let me just jump out of here because you can see the sort of computational systems that were built and then how that also applied to choreography. Oh my gosh, this does not want me to talk anymore. But some of the shows, and then I will be 2 seconds because I'd like to show you what this became. Here we go. um, and how this interactive piece came to pass. I hope you can still hear it. I'm not sure. Can you? So people would walk on the treadmills, and there were sensors in the treadmills which would activate the images and also the sound. So it was a whole kind of I like Kulapat's word. It was a holistic kind of networked integration of the space. So so thank you so much for letting me explain that, and I will stop sharing my screen. Stop sharing. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Grisha.
You're welcome.
So I would like to jump directly into the discussion, and Moritz showed now an application of the digital twin and the mixed reality platform we were providing for this project. And for our audience, it probably makes sense to show you a short sequence of a video of our studio where we can explain a little bit how this really works. So what you see now, I hope it's starting. Can you see the video? Okay, this is Anna in our studio. And what you see on the left is actually the digital twin with this strange object moving around in the space, which is actually representing Anna. And you can even have this kind of personal view of Anna, how she moves around. And this is based on real-time sensor information we get. So the location, the head orientation, everything is tracked by this technology. So we exactly know how people move in a space. Based on this information, we, or even what they touch, what they interact with, and based on this information, we are able to trigger, for example, sounds like in the realization in the Kunstmuseum, or we can even trigger events in the space. So there can be physically something happen when she approaches or when she touches something, and so on. In this case, it's more about audio in the beginning. So yeah, you see the model is that sensors are attached in this case to the headphones of Anna, and so we are able to exactly understand what the person is doing in the space. And this data is sent to the digital twin, and the digital twin has a model, a behavioral model in the back, or a game engine, or game mechanics. And this game mechanics then can trigger events and can start to interact with Anna, play out sounds, give her information on the display, or even triggering events in the space, as you will see in a moment. And for sure, you can also combine it with visual AR. In this case, it's a simple application. It's an iPad she's using, and there's an overlay to an object. In this case, it's a quite simple thing. It's just a piece of a model, which is then starts to live. You see people walking around in the city model and so on. So these kind of things can happen. And all these things are kind of linked to her profile. So the system knows where she was, what she already did, what language she is talking, and so on. So we can even provide customized content based on her journey and start to interact. We call it the digital companion. So the system can support her in her journey and can give her a customized experience in the space. So just to give our audience the chance to understand what's technically behind such a solution, I would like to ask you, Moritz, based on your experiences with the project at the Kunstmuseum. I mean, for me personally, to experience your work was really mind-blowing in the sense that I understood that there is in this layer of this audio layer you added to this physical exhibition with these real paintings, it's something new, which is a known form of how to embed or overlay or augment something on top of an existing, let's call it existing experience. And this interplay between these two experiences is, for me, it was super powerful and super, yeah, it was super strong. So what do you think? What could be the future of applying these kind of concepts to exhibitions?
Well, I mean, I think I will. I can mostly address it from an artist's point of view. I think that, you know, looking at Pissarro sounds, to me, it was important that though the exhibition, the paintings, the existing works, and the sound composition, they supplement each other or they enhance the perception. So I think the strongest point I'd like to make, I guess, is that at a time when these different elements start to illustrate one of the other, it doesn't make so much sense to me. It's when they coexist to broaden the experience and to broaden the perception of one or the other. That's when I think it's most rewarding. And I think that means that in the creation of these, it can be a place, it can be a specific existing artwork, it can be a museum, but it could also be a different type of environment that such experiences or such a layer of sound could be applied to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, maybe we go into another direction when we talk about embodiment, when we talk about, let's call it behavioral of the visitor and how, you know, what these technologies are doing with you. I would like to show you a short sequence of a video, which is a project based on HoloLens we did for a Swiss client. And you see these people interacting with models. Actually, it starts with a table which triggers models, and these models of Switzerland, geodata models. People can move around. And what is the funny thing here is have a look on how people behave. Have a look on what the gestures they do. Have a look on the way of it changes the behavior and the movement and how you interact in a space. And I think this could be, you know, for me it was kind of showed me that we have to think about new concepts of how people behave in a space like that, and what this technology will do with us, because the relation with our body and the space probably will change based on interacting with these kind of solutions. What do you think, Grisha? What is your thoughts about this could change how we interact or how we behave in exhibition space?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that depending on where you're starting from, the behavior changes, and by that I mean like the strangeness of the choreography that you showed in this video, like this emergent choreography, this spontaneous choreography that came out of people trying to manipulate the virtual model, was, if you took away all the technology, you'd be like, what are those people doing? And so there's something, I think, really rich about leveraging disorientation. Like the tools, as we talked about, the tools, especially with those HoloLenses and with earphones and with sensors on your body, the tools simultaneously like shut off some human sensory hardware, if you will, and extend or enhance them as well. And I think that playing with the balance between what's covered, what's extended, and as Moritz was saying, like a subtle, like where there's not one thing that's dominant, because just generally speaking, enhancing the senses or shutting them off, which much technology does, sort of focuses you, a film focuses you, so you don't know what's going on behind your head. You only know what's going on in front of your face. I think, especially in the context of space and museum design in this context, we could really, really leverage the natural sensory sort of head is obviously always tracked, but tracking other parts of oneself could be really amazing, because gait, walking, running, turning, orientation and disorientation, I think would be really cool, depending on the context that you're wanting to evolve,
Sure. Yes, thanks a lot. Yeah, so yeah, we're talking about the space and how space, what augmentation could also mean when we talk about space. I have a short video with an example dealing with this. I mean, in a small range, but you can also apply it in a bigger scale. So what you see is this books. We call it interactive books. They're really physical books. So it's a real book with pages. You can turn them. There is printed parts in the book. Actually, they were done for a Picasso exhibition at the Fondation Bayer. And what you see, as soon as you start to interact with the book, you can choose language. You have this kind of comfort functionality, but you also can interact with the paintings and the pages. And I think this is also augmentation for me, because it works with this physical world. It could be a space, it could be a wall, whatever, a floor, and you can start to interact with it. And with this kind of really intuitive approach, using real materials, in this case, it's a combination of having printed pages and projected on pages in a way that you can't really see what's printed and what is projected, combined with sensor infrastructure. Yeah, so this is I think gives us new properties or new possibilities to design spaces. What do you think, Kulapat? Using these kind of technologies to design spaces in a more dynamic way, is this an option for the future?
Well, absolutely, and I would love Brian to respond to this as well. But my quick answer is, I think it depends on what art and museums and culture means to each of us, right? The layers. Yeah. I think we've seen a lot of technology being used as interpretation, provide context, provide a different way of looking. But at the same time, if you believe that art and game is not in the object of art, it's a portal through something else. For example, if you look at a Monet painting and you feel like the love of nature, our existence in the world of nature, then it's not about what that painting is, but about that understanding and experience that come with it. So for example, the work that Grisha and Moritz have done is also going through that portal, but not stopping at the painting, at the painted surface, but going to that human emotions and human understanding that should be coming from the art, making layers of kinetic experiences or audio experience allow us to get to that point that maybe Monet was trying to get us to, right? So I think that was the layers that allow people to, because, some people are very visual, some people are not, right? And visual literacy sometimes is the limiting aspect of what people can appreciate art or not. Some people feel like, oh, you need to, to appreciate Monet, you have to love Cézanne, for example, right? But in reality, it may not need to be. Like if music and kinetic experience and other can come in, you might be able to get to where Monet wanted us to go, assist by his painting, but something else as well. So I think there's a glimpse of hope that the multidisciplinary art and experience can come in. So I feel that we see great examples today. Brian?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think that what's interesting, in terms of what we do, we're on the helping curators and artists create those experiences within the space, or creating a space within which people will be able to do this work. And so I think that what we're seeing today is just not only is there a lot more available technology, both on the artistic production side, but also on the sort of museum experience or exhibition design side. But we're also seeing a much greater dexterity in how to use them and experimentation, how to use them in ways that are really interesting, where they're no longer trying to create a sort of analogous experience or, I think a lot of virtual reality and augmented reality was focused on trying to recreate an actual thing as opposed to becoming something else. And that's, I think, what's so interesting to me, and I think that sound art, Moritz's piece, I think, is part of a long legacy of amazing sound pieces that where you do get a alternate experience of a museum you love, right? It's not even just about those paintings. It's, I've been going to this museum, my whole life. I'm very familiar with the space. I now get to have a completely different experience, be transported somewhere else. And so I think the ability to have museums simultaneously be multiple experiences, multifaceted, a little bit more choose your own adventure. I think we now live in a world where, we gain knowledge through self-discovery. It's no longer about being taught in a linear fashion in school. We have access to the sum total of human knowledge digitally now on our phones. We choose how we learn every day. And so I think being able to go into a museum environment that is digitally augmented allows you to also choose how you experience those spaces. It also means that, in theory, those of us that work with museums can hopefully, observe and glean from the data of how museums are used and rethink what museums are. And that's a pretty exciting place to be.
Thanks a lot, Brian. So it's my turn to find a conclusion on today's discussion, which is not easy because we just started to open up the field. But I will use a quote from you, Kulapat. You said museum as a playground, and I think this is actually what we are going to do, and we need to do, is actually using the museum as a playground, also to test and experience and design new experiences. And I think with the concept of a digital twin, we get the basis to do that. So I think we can start now easily to explore and expand the fields and go on these different layers and do experiences and learn from it. And so that's actually my conclusion. We are at the starting point. Technology is available. Everything is there. The skilled people are there too, and the creative people too. So I think we should now start exploring different applications in the coming years. So thanks a lot to the panelists. And I don't know if we still have time for some questions from the audience. Mari, is there something coming from the audience side? We can't hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
So we don't have any questions for the moment. So maybe
totally
if someone
clear.
wants to ask something, it's now or never.
So yeah, thanks a lot for listening and watching, and hope to see you in another occasion soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.